All right, everyone, welcome into another new edition of Celtics Beat. Hard to believe it's November and that we don't have real basketball to talk about, but then again, this is a very unusual year when normally we're not talking about real basketball, let alone the NBA Finals happening in August. So, let's all just kind of adjust on the fly, not to mention try and figure out when the hell this next season is going to start. Whole lot of debate. Maybe it's next month, maybe it's the month after. We will find out. Adam Kaufman with you, along with, of course, Evan Valenti, who you've come to know very well by now. And we bring in, for the first time on this show, at least when I have been hosting, Dan Greenberg. You know him as, Barstool Greenie. The man has obviously been around the block. Once upon a time, a bit of an unknown. He's burst onto the scene. You can always find his videos, his blogs, his coarse language on social media. Make sure you give him a follow. Dan, what's going on, buddy?
How's it going, guys?
Thriving.
Yeah. If for those watching, not listening, I'm sure most people listening, but if you are viewing us chatting here, you can see that Evan is still in the Halloween spirit, which is great to see, by the way.
Look, this costume usually costs quite a bit, so I'm going to get the most out of it as much as humanly possible. So,
I thought tell the people again, those listening.
Yeah, Richie Tenenbaum is the inspiration this year because I had the COVID hair and I haven't got a haircut since February, so I figured I'd incorporate it into the costume. So I had three finalists. We had Richie Tenenbaum, we had Bradley Cooper from The Hangover. I think his name is Phil, right? And then the last one, which has been really easy to do, was John Wick. I thought Wick would have been a really solid one with the hair I got going on and the beard at the same time. I think we could have figured out that one, but I thought Tenenbaum was more obscure, and that tends to skew my direction. So,
and as opposed to like leading men like Bradley Cooper and Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, right, exactly. I went Luke Wilson in a Wes Anderson movie, which is definitely right up everybody's alley for sure.
That's good self-awareness,
Yeah, yeah, right.
Did you do anything for Halloween there, Greenie?
No, I just hung out with my two monsters, my two dogs, had some candy. Pretty mellow in my old age of 33. So
yeah, that's okay. That's we appreciate anyone out there that's keeping this safe and socially distant and self-aware, unlike all the people that are putting Instagram stories out at parties playing beer pong. Really appreciate all those people and setting us back years at a time probably. But let's dive more into you real quick, because I think, again, you're a well-known commodity for among those who follow the Celtics, obviously, and your videos in particular are probably a place that really, I'm guessing, grew your social media audience, and obviously people have followed on from there. But how would you, as someone who, I don't know if I'm even using the word loosely here, but covers the Celtics, because you're not like a reporter, a journalist, you're more of a social media personality, how would you describe yourself? With regard to your coverage, not you as a person specifically.
Well, they're one and the same, because really the Celtics are pretty much all I care about in the world. So I would describe myself as like, the voice of an everyday fan that just has access to a fairly large website and and just sort of, I'm passionate. I sort of try to just tell how I feel in that moment. I don't have any sources or anything, connections. I just see it like any other fan and, just kind of lose my mind at times. But like I said, they're the only thing I really care about outside my family and my dogs. So it kind of it works.
All right. So as the voice of an everyday fan, what do you care most about right now? Like what is stressing you out with regard to the Celtics as we wait for the next season to begin?
Well, if just today, I don't know if you realized, but today was the 1-year anniversary of Jason Tatum's game winner over the Knicks. So seeing all those highlights, I put the video out myself. It's, I twisted the knife myself, given, the wounds that are still pretty fresh for how the season ended. But I think I'm like everybody else. I'm just itching for them to start. I want to see what, moves we hear about that they never end up making in free agency. I want to see what they do at the draft. And if Ainge finally trade some picks, but, I'm not as doom and gloom as I think as a lot of people are, given how the season ended. But, I tend to be overly optimistic at times, to my own fault.
With regard, by the way, to the whole when is the season going to start, just for anyone that has missed this along the way, Adrian Wojnarowski, Shams Charania, they're both sending out tweets left and right. These are the news breakers that we tend to talk about. And Woj putting out, this is 2 days ago, ESPN sources for the fourth time Fourth time. NBA and the Players Association agree to extend the deadline to serve notice on terminating the current collective bargaining agreement. The extension goes to November 6th now, which allows additional time for talks on CBA modifications. Discussions ongoing this weekend. So, that just in the last couple of days here. And then still a gulf between the NBA and the PA on a start date for the season. NBA wants pre-Christmas. The PA still preferring mid-January, maybe right around Martin Luther King Day, which has been widely reported. Economic issues remain significant, including escrow withholding on player salaries with revenue down because of no fans. So, again, we're not guys that are, we have inside information with regard to reporting like when ultimately this is going to happen. When they came out with the date, though, Dan, of January 18th, Martin Luther King Day, that made a lot of sense to me. Like December 1st, back when that was out there, when Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, put that out there, I never believed that for a second. Even when they said Christmas Day, let's start Christmas, that seemed early to me. And then you get into mid to late January, that started to make some sense just in regard to, I know not every team went into the bubble clearly, but those who did and those who went deep into the playoffs, like the teams that, just wrapped up the finals not long ago, the Lakers and Heat, you got to give them some type of an off season, some type of a gap. And I know they want to get underway and they want to have as full a season as possible. And there are reports out there of a 72-game season, and all of that still is up for debate. And, can we get done in time for guys to participate in the Olympics? Is there going to be a midseason tournament? Do we put out the first half schedule and then feel everything out, and a second half schedule? We're going to go in the bubble. Are we going to be in home arenas? When are fans going to be allowed in? There are so many things that nobody has the answers to. I don't, and I have felt this way for a while. I continue to feel this way. December to me just seems very unrealistic. I think we're looking at January 1, best case scenario. But how do you view this with regard to when this thing is going to tip off?
Yeah, it's really interesting because if you remember dating back to when the bubble was going on and they asked Adam Silver about, a pre-January deadline, he was very quick to sort of shut that down. Then I don't know what happened. Maybe it was the final revenue numbers came in or the TV partners were putting pressure on him. Now, all of a sudden you heard about this pre-Christmas date, which then Mark Stein a few weeks later said training camps would open on December 1st. Well, the draft is November 18th. So you have like 12 days to do the draft, free agency, trades, all that stuff before training camp. And it would only give the teams in the finals 50 days of an offseason, which I just can't wrap my head around. So I'm of the opinion that we'll probably be closer to, middle of January. But the problem is, and why extending this CBA is so important, is because if the NBA is going to push back and say, okay, we'll start that late, but you're only getting 50 games, and the players want 72 games, they could just rip up the CBA, and now we have a lockout. So it's like, I don't think there's really enough talk about, they do need to, rectify this, issue with the current CBA and get that ironed out. Because if not, what's to stop them from just, having another lockout, and now we don't have games, who knows when, because the season schedule is going to be all messed up. So I'm hoping it's January. I think, maybe there was a little negotiating in the media with all these leaks coming out of a, December start. But you have to be, the biggest stars in the league play deep into, this fall. So are you really going to start a season and then maybe LeBron or Jimmy Butler or other people like that are just going to take the first month off? That's going to kill, the ratings and the interest around the league. So it's a fascinating situation, but I do not think we're going to have basketball in, 5 weeks or anything.
No, I agree with that. I think, Adam Silver's done a nice job of trying to appease all the people involved with this. I mean, you have TV rights and stadium deals and all that. There's so many people involved. There's so much money flying around that I think Adam Silver understands that, okay, we have to find a ways to compromise. We saw how baseball handled their scheduling issues over the summer, and they got ripped apart every single day in the media for not having a plan at all when, you had basketball and hockey, shutting down midseason, trying to figure out what to do on the fly. Those two leagues accomplished what they were able to accomplish. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball Had no idea. It kept going further and further and further in terms of games being canceled, and that date, the start date of the year, got moved a billion times, and everybody couldn't believe that there was no plan there. So I think the one thing that we'll say to Silver's credit is there's at least going to be a plan. And I think, ripping that date up and moving it back to November 6th wouldn't shock me if it's moved back again. But at the end of the day, I do think they'll find a way to compromise between the before Christmas and Martin Luther King Day. I think they'll find some sort of medium in between the two. I don't think we'll play basketball in 2020 again. I think we'll wait till 2021. I think that, as Dan pointed out, like, you can't have these teams have the draft, free agency, trades in 2 weeks, then expect them to get the ball out there to start training camp in 2 weeks. It's just not a timetable that's going to work for anybody. So the more time you give some of these players to get acclimated, get them settled, and then they can have a legitimate training camp, and maybe they can have a couple of scrimmages before the season starts, and then, start playing games, maybe the first or second week in January, then we might have something that seems a little more concrete. I think, the pre-Christmas thing, I think a lot of people are like, oh, we have to have the NBA on Christmas. That's the day, right? I think that's, as much as people want it to happen, I don't think you're going to see basketball on Christmas this year, and that's going to be the best, I think, for everybody. I mean,
I know what drives all of this. It's the same thing that drove the bubble. It's
money.
It's revenue. It's making money. It's wanting to get as much as you can from your various media partners, and that's the incentive behind having NBA basketball on Christmas. It's a huge revenue generator, obviously, and not to cut you off, Evan, I apologize.
No, that's a fair point.
That's what it comes down to. And look, I might have said NBA finals in August earlier, starting off the show. I don't know what's up, what's down at this point, but just talking through this whole day.
Still March, so it's okay.
Yeah, look, seriously, it's 3 weeks. Like 3 weeks ago, we had NBA basketball at this point, and now we're talking about starting in a matter of a month and a half. All three of us are gigantic NBA fans. So I will only speak for me, but you guys weigh in. I'm not ready. I know.
I'm ready.
I'm ready. No, I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm with Greenie. I'm ready.
It's ready. Tip it off tomorrow. Let's get a look at the Celtics. We're ready. I'm not ready. Maybe it's just because September was in October too, the start of this month, or last month, I guess at this point, it's November 1st, but we're just so insane with regard to the influx and return of sports. And, we'll never have a period of time theoretically like that again, obviously, all brought on by the pandemic and not having anything for a period of 4 months to now we're okay. It's baseball's done. The World Series is complete. It's really, all due respect to PGA and UFC. It's really just NFL right now, and will be for the next little while. I'm good waiting for New Year's for the NBA. I don't need it tomorrow. You know what I mean? But I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
Yeah, I don't know. I watched the Patriots today, and I'm just looking at my calendar being when did the Celtics tip off? What's going on here?
That's fair. We're used to them being better.
Yeah, but I just think it's a situation where, you have to think about the teams that didn't make the bubble and haven't played in 8 months already.
Right.
Is it really fair to them to I guess as long as you could open up some sort of practice and training camp, I don't see the difference of just letting them get scrimmages in and get familiar with it. But, I just think when the high profile teams in this league, barring the Clippers who sort of choked, but you have all these high name, big power teams make deep runs in the playoffs. If you want a good product, it was already pretty apparent last year that nobody really cared about the load management rules, and everyone will just come up with some sort of designation. How is the league going to force a team that made a deep run to play their main guys in the first month of a season when they've only had, a month and a half break? I just think Adam Silver is a realist, and he'll say, what good is it if, no one's going to watch a Chicago, Pelicans game in October, but, everyone would watch a Laker game. And then if LeBron's not playing or Anthony Davis isn't playing, that's not going to help the turn, in terms of the ratings and the revenue and all that. So I can't see him pulling the trigger. Maybe they have some sort of early preseason scrimmages for the teams that didn't make the bubble or something. I think he'll come up with another solution to address those guys, but not rush back into it when, it's too early.
Yeah, I don't know what the right move is because to your point about that, there have been reports out there, and I don't remember who had them, but if they really start this in December and guys like LeBron and other high-profile guys that went deep into the playoffs and that say, have fun, we're not going to play the first month of the year because we are not physically ready to come back for that and
Right.
play at our best. Like, never mind playing every once in a while and load management, yada, yada. Like, we're straight up not playing the first month plus of the year. Silver can't allow that. There's no universe in which
Right.
the league can start with those guys just outwardly saying we're not going to go yet. They wouldn't, start off that way. But then you do have all these other guys, these teams, like you said, that weren't even in the bubble that, there were the reports initially that they were going to do kind of that second bubble just to allow those guys to go and stay in shape and all that. And that never really materialized. And I'm still not sure that guys aren't going to wind up back in a bubble environment again. I think one of the things, and this, none of us are doctors or scientists, and we're not going to pretend to be either, but I think one of the great unknowns, obviously, is the potential for this second wave. And we're still very much in the first wave of this thing, the coronavirus and the pandemic, and numbers are, shooting back up again, depending on where you are in the country. Certainly in New England and Massachusetts, they're a hell of a lot higher than they were a few weeks ago. And around the country for that matter as well, even though it seems like in places like Florida, you can do whatever the hell you want. You can have full stadiums. So it's not everyone is on the same page. But if this second wave ends up happening, or there's just that confusion between, is it the coronavirus? Is it the flu? Is it just regular cold symptoms of the winter? Nobody has a clue what it is they're experiencing. I'm not sure these teams can even enter a situation where they're ready to begin the season in their respective stadiums anyway. Certainly not with fans there, but I mean, it was a disaster there for baseball for a little while, and they figured it out eventually and then got into a bubble and everything was fine until Justin Turner decided to be.
Yeah.
And then, you had like NFL, the
entire Raiders offensive line was on the COVID list,
That's the thing. Like, NFL's kind of a cluster fudge right now. Like, that's by no means ironed itself out. So I don't see how Adam Silver can look at this. And I think he's done a phenomenal job. We'd all agree on that with, where they were to where they are now and just sort of shepherding in this whole thing. But I don't see how they can be comfortable preparing to start a season in the next month and a half.
Right, and that's the thing, right? We're talking about a start date, but we don't even know where the games would even be played. I think, at least personally, I was very impressed with how flawless the bubble, was able to be pulled off, right? You had a couple guys cross the line for like some takeout and stuff like that, but, the reason it was so
Wings
successful
wings are good.
is because they were able to get everybody to buy in this little ecosystem. I don't think they're going to start next season in Walt Disney World. So, how are you going to then convert an entire league? I feel like we would have been hearing about the plans already if they were going to have everything ready to go the first week of December in a bubble site location. So the fact that we don't even know for sure if it's going to be like in the major leagues where you're going to be able to go from stadium to stadium, but then, you're just trusting, I guess, like what baseball did, is that you don't have an outbreak. But I can't see a situation where you have teams playing different number of games. So until they even figure out where they're playing, I don't even think we can really understand what the timeline is for the games to actually start. I can't imagine guys are going to sign up for another season-long bubble after doing it, 50 days ago.
Let's talk a little Gordon Hayward while we've got.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Before we move on here, are we totally discounting the idea of a season starts in a bubble where it's, maybe 2 locations instead of 1, where you split in different conferences, where you have maybe a month to give some people some more time to maybe figure out logistically how to figure this out? Like, I wouldn't totally discount. I would discount an entire season-long bubble. There's no way anybody could do that. I think that's asking too much. But could we start the season in a month or 6 weeks in a bubble? Just throwing that out there, because I wouldn't be shocked if they're like, well, it works. Because again, we've all talked about, the bubble was a huge success. The basketball was the purest sense of basketball we've had in a long time. You didn't have these travel days where guys were exhausted because they're all staying in one place. There are other benefits of the bubble that I think that maybe Silver would explore as like a starter to the season, and then expanding out from there to maybe everybody's home arenas again. I don't know, because I mean, every state's different in terms of allowing fans inside the arenas. I know Massachusetts probably won't let anybody in an arena until we have this thing figured out. Florida, as we talked about, completely different, right? So I wouldn't be shocked if it gives them a buffer zone to figure out how to handle these stadiums all around the country, to figure out, okay, maybe we can buy some time until February, and then maybe we can start allowing a few people into all the stadiums. Because I know, again, like having fans is a big part of the game, and I know NBA is committed to maybe finding a way to get fans into the stadiums, but they have to be able to do it safely, and I'm not sure if we're quite there yet.
I mean, just my opinion with no inside information on this whatsoever, I would say that I think they'd explore it just in the sense of doing due diligence and being, having everything on the table and being aware of what all the options are. I think it is a last case scenario, like absolute worst case scenario, to start in the bubble and then obviously continue the season outside the bubble. I think you'd have to deal with what's the schedule going to look like. It's specific to a bubble. Do we only have a bubble schedule and then we reassess a schedule after that, after some sort of
it's complicated, no doubt,
tournament? Because, you got to remember, like, even though it went really well, obviously health and safety protocol wise, it went exceptionally well. Couldn't have gone better. I mean, there were 0 positive cases of the virus, but it, players didn't like it. They didn't want to be there. They missed their families. They missed home. I'm sure they liked not traveling. That part was probably pretty convenient, but just life inside the bubble outside of bonding and all of that was, I think it was kind of a nuisance to them. And obviously everything else going on in the world with regard to Black Lives Matter and, so many other things that we haven't touched on as it concerns that, where some of these players may not even want to come back and play just yet while everything is still such a mess in the world. But that's a whole other conversation. I just don't think the bubble is on the table right now in the sense of, like, I think there's column A, what do we want to do and what's feasible and what's realistic. And then there's column B, like, where could we land if we absolutely have to? And that's where the bubble is. But that's what I think. I don't know about you, Dan.
Yeah, I just think, if there are going to be multiple bubble locations, teams have to start reporting in like the next few weeks to get that all sorted out. I think they're just I'm with you, Adam. I think that's sort of break glass in case of emergency. Let's try to at least get it to where people can play in their home arenas without fans. And if, there's a certain state that doesn't allow it, what's the alternative to that? But like I said, I'm just happy I'm not the one that has to come up with the plan because it's complicated.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, numbers aren't great right now. I think numbers would have to be bad, like really bad to, for them to want to do that. But to your point, I think everything is out there. As far as Gordon Hayward, because I want to get into some actual stuff pertaining to the team. So, and I didn't look on your Twitter to see if you did this, Dan. Maybe you did, because it's like an aggregator's dream. These are my favorite types of offseason reports right here. And I don't remember who had this one, but I'm just going to read some of these quotes. It originated, though, from Bobby Marks, who, as we know, front office insider for ESPN, Zach Lowe, one of his colleagues. They were on the Lowe podcast. And what Mark said was, I think what Gordon Hayward's agent is doing right now is canvassing the league. He's doing the Al Horford plan. Lowe adds, we don't know that there's a Gordon Hayward chase. We don't know that any of this is happening. I'm just saying there's a little bit of buzz. Something is mildly afoot here. And so you have all those headlines of, report. Gordon Hayward is thinking of the Al Horford approach. It may as well say report. There's no new news. Gordon Hayward is just keeping his options open as to whether to return to the Celtics and opt in or go get a better deal elsewhere like Al Horford did if that's on the table. Or, of course, he could just opt out, return, lower AAV, longer term, lock up some money. Doesn't matter how he plays this year because he'll be set bank for the next few years. And what everyone seems to think you can do is just trade Gordon Hayward, which is not an option whatsoever until at least he opts in. And, then at that point in time, sure, you could ship him out if you want to, but you can't just say, Gordon, we're going to get rid of you. Cool. I'm just going to leave then. Like, you're going to just send me somewhere. So the whole Gordon Hayward dynamic of this offseason, and something we're going to really, explore here within this show, is really, I'm not going to call it fascinating, but it's interesting. It's really interesting because it's the biggest sort of off-season wild card to what next year looks like for them with regard to roster construction. So, just what are your thoughts on the whole situation? How do you think it plays out? What do you think should be Danny Ainge's goal here?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually I know I spend way too much of my day trying to convince people that Gordon Hayward is actually good at basketball and should actually be on this team and actually makes them better. The stuff with Zach Lowe just makes me so mad because, he's like, oh, there's nothing going on, but there may be. And it's just like, it's one thing if there's just a random blogger like me says it, where like he's like a somebody. So really there's no information, but he's trying to make it. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I just look at it like this. There's really only two scenarios in where you have to trade Gordon Hayward. The first is if he goes up to Ainge and he says, you know what? Like, I just need a fresh start. I'm going to opt out. I don't want to come back. At least get something for me. Okay, fine. In that instance, you have to trade him because you can't just lose him for nothing. The second is if he opts in to his contract for $30+ million, and then you get to the trade deadline and they find out that he's not going to sign an extension, you have to trade him at the deadline. It's just like with Anthony Davis. It's just like anybody that's on an expiring deal that you're not going to be able to retain. You have to flip him.
Like Kyrie.
Like Kyrie Irving should have been.
That worked.
The goal for Ainge is obviously opt out, do not have an Al Horford situation, and sign a more team-friendly deal. I think that is sort of the best scenario for everybody involved because, you look at the teams with cap space, it's the Knicks, it's Atlanta, it's not teams that, if I'm Gordon Hayward, A, they may not even be interested, but B, it's like you're going backwards if you're, want to contend and be on, these winning teams. And for the Celtics, they're over the cap anyways. So it's not like if Gordon Hayward leaves or they trade him, they have $30 million to play with. So it's beneficial for them to retain someone of his skill set and of his production, someone that I think last year we saw accept his role as that fourth option playmaker, doesn't necessarily demand the ball and demand shots, that might limit the growth of your younger players. And before he broke his hand, he was one of the best players on the team. So I think, my optimistic side says he'll opt out and re-sign for a team-friendly deal. My gut tells me he's just going to opt in for that $31 million, and we'll have to just see how the season goes and how he looks. Because if he doesn't look great, maybe he's going to be more willing to sign an extension if Ainge is interested. But if he looks great and he wants to hit the offseason next summer, where there's going to be a ton of teams that are saving up cap space for someone like Giannis who might strike out and have all this money to play, he becomes much more of a flight risk. Let's say Miami doesn't get Giannis and, he was on Gordon. They were in on Gordon Hayward the last time around. They're a real threat, I would think. So Ainge, in that sense, would have to trade him at the deadline. So my head says he's going to opt in for the $30 million. My heart says, please opt out and sign for like 22.
Yeah. I've been the not advocate. I've just been the person trying to at least have the audience consider the trade of Gordon Hayward, right? Because that's one of the few ways Boston can really improve besides trading a contract like that, getting something back for it, right? Before you get him and I'm sure there are arguments for letting Hayward walk for nothing, which I'm sure there are arguments for it. I'd love to hear it. But at the end of the day, I sort of agree with Dan. Like, I think it makes sense for everybody, the most sense for Hayward to sign an extension this offseason versus the next one. I think with Hayward, we have this unfortunate group of data that just indicates that he's a little injury prone. But as Dan pointed out, like, where is he going to go with these teams that have cap space? Like, where's he going to go where he has a better option to maybe win a title? Because I think at this point for Gordon, I think Gordon understands that he's not going to be the best player on a title team anymore. I think Kemba Walker understands, like, he's not going to be the best player on a title team anymore. Like, you have those hopes when you're younger, when you're in your 20s, in your prime, in your late 20s, and your 30s. Like, you have that, like, oh, yeah, I could still be, Gordon in Utah. Could he be the centerpiece of a championship team? I don't know, maybe. But now he gets to Boston, and he has two wings alongside him, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, both very good. Could you say, all right, I'll be happy making $25 million a year as the fourth piece of a really good contending team? I think a lot of people, when you get to a certain spot, say, yeah, I think that's reasonable enough for me to handle. Like, are you going to go to Atlanta? Are you going to go to New York? Are you going to go to Miami and have, Miami's an interesting one just because, they have all the shooters that you'd want, right? And to really space the floor for a guy like Gordon between Robinson and Hero, and even with Bam and Jimmy on the floor, it makes life a little bit easier for you. But I think if you look at all the teams, maybe like a Dallas who might have a lot of cap space, trying to clear room for Giannis. There's going to be a couple other teams involved as well. But like at the end of the day, does it make sense for Gordon to leave Boston, a place where he's comfortable with? He knows the coach. The only one that makes me worry is Indiana, because there's the attraction of going home. And we all know that Indiana loves Indiana. So.
But for that to I don't know if they even have unless he would take a discount to go to Indiana. Right. I don't know if they even have the flexibility to sign him outright. I think it depends on, if they're going to move on from Oladipo and sort of what contracts, if they take back expiring deals, if it were to happen next offseason. I just look at how the Celtics are constructed. And if you're worried about Kemba Walker's knee, they don't really have a backup point guard on the roster outside of Marcus Smart, with Brad Wanamaker's, pending free agency. I'm more inclined to say, like, this team needs him for his playmaking, his ball handling. If Kemba's knee were to flare up, or they have to be, sort of cautious with him, you can run the offense through Gordon Hayward. So I think fans are frustrated because he landed on someone's foot and his finger got jammed in, LaMarcus Aldridge's jersey and he broke his hand. But, when I look at his NBA career, he's a guy who plays 78 plus games. I'm not going to, get bent out of shape because the guy's pinky gets, bent in a crazy direction. That's just a freak thing to me. And I look at what he gives them in terms of how they play and the spacing he provides. And, obviously he came back a little too early on his ankle against Miami. He missed that bunny layup in game 6. Like, he has some brutal moments, but I just think the ceiling of what he gives this team potential-wise when he's healthy is, every Celtic fan should want that, because if he's gone, every single person who didn't want Gordon Hayward on this team is going to be begging for the things that he gives them. They're going to need, where's the playmaking? Where's the, the versatility on the wing? Well, you had it in Gordon Hayward and you let him go. So they need to bring him back.
Simmons throughout this trade, I want to get both of your opinions on it, because I've kind of like just asked friends that are Celtics fans about this. The idea was Hayward 14, and if you had to add a pick, you could with one of the other 2 first-rounders Celtics have, to trade up to 7 with Detroit, because I think Detroit's 7, the Knicks are 8, up to 7 for the 7th pick, and Blake Griffin. Who says no? Yeah.
So Hayward in the 14th for Blake in the 7th.
Yeah. I think Danny says no to that.
I think I was going to say, I think Ainge says no, because I think Blake has like 3 or 4 more years left on that deal, right?
I think it might be 2, but you're talking about a guy with knee problems,
right,
that are pretty like chronic.
Different story. So he's someone, right? He's someone where I don't consider his injuries freak injuries, right? No. He's a guy that has, who I would consider more injury prone. But I guess it would depend on who's there at 7, right? Like, is it Killian Hayes? Is it, the center from USC? So I think that might have to play into it. But I think Ainge probably says no without knowing any of that info.
Greenie, we're going to let you go on that, but appreciate you hopping on. I'm sure it won't be the last time before the season does roll around, whenever the hell that's actually going to be. But appreciate you hopping on, giving us your insights, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Anytime.